Actually, what I will talk today is where Vladimir left last time. It's about layouts and views and how to make them useful for you. So let me share my screen. Well, I'm just opening a new Android Studio. As you can see, you might just continue from whatever you want. Last time, Vladimir created layouts. It was actually even more complicated than this. It doesn't matter now. So let's, if you want, we can just copy a couple of them and set the orientation here so that you will remember what we did. So we have here, just a minute. Yeah, we have here 3 text views, as you can see. Now, what we want to do, or what we can do with them, that's the important part. So we need to somehow use them in our code to do something, right? So first of all, the first thing we need to do is to have an identifier for these things, because right now, as you can see, they don't have anything to distinguish between them. I mean, we can have write different texts here to visually distinguish them, but in the sense of code, we still don't know how to reach out them. So the thing is, we need to define IDs like this. These IDs are reference points or keys for us to reach these text views. It could be same for another view. So let's do the same thing for others too. As you can see, it is red right now because these are supposed to be unique. So I need to make them unique. Okay, so right now we have 3 text views named as text view 1, text view 2, text view 3. If you will go to our main activity, which is completely empty, as you can see, we can reach out to them via following code. For example, let's say, well, text view, find view by ID. I'm writing the text view here to state what is the type of this, and it automatically sees text view 1, as you can see. Here it is red because we don't have it in the import statements. In order to import it, I'm pressing, I don't know the Windows shortcuts, I'm sorry, but Alt Enter, and right now we have the text view import here too. So with this one, actually, we don't even need this text view part here. We can have it as a view or in like there's a hierarchy, but let's keep it here for now. So what we can do with text view is actually you just press text view and just after adding the dot over there, you can see the options. As Android Studio always shows this for any kind of objects. Well, there are a lot of things. You can set the text, for example, something else like, let's say, change the text, okay? This is one way of doing it. This is traditional way of doing things. Right now, we have actually a different way, which I will show you, which is a better way of doing, because it will also, you will not need to write these methods as find view by ID. You will not need to save text view. For example, if you will have another method here, let's say private fun change text. Okay, I don't have access to this text view because it's a local variable here. So I need to do this same thing again, or I need to define this text view out of the scope here. So it would be a global variable. Only then I would have the defining it as a var, nullable. Yes, we also need to make it latent, I guess. The only thing, the only way, of course, we need to delete this. The only way to reach out this text view from other methods is by defining it globally. And
delete the question mark.
yes. Oh, yes, right now. Which is not convenient for us because we don't need them, we don't want them. So what instead we can do, as I'm just deleting everything I wrote, is I will use view binding. Just a minute. I need to tell you how to do it. We have Gradle files. We didn't actually talk a lot about them in the past, but we have two built Gradle files. These are actually defining the dependencies on our project. So I will go to this one, the app one. The other one is actually the defining Gradle file for all of our project, which we can have other components in a project. Like in this case, our component, our Java module, let's say, is app. So for this one, for app, we are going to this Gradle file and we are defining build features, opening, closing, and saying view binding true. And after all changes that's happening on the Gradle files, we need to synchronize the project and clicking sync now here. So what I just did is I let view binding feature to be able to be used. To be honest with you, I also learned view binding just like nowadays because we were using something else called synthetics, but I will not get into the detail of this right now. View binding is the proposed way of reading views. So let's delete this import statement. Okay, what I'm going to do right now is I will define the binding, val binding, in a way. Let me show you. So our layout file is here, activity main. So our binding file is going to be activity main binding, as you can see. Let's define this as lateness and var, of course. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this binding is, if I will tell you the story, is like, as you can see, this XML is this layout is an XML file, unlike the class files that we are defining. So find view by ID was actually getting into this XML and looking for this specific text view every time. So it was making a search in the XML. And if you have the dependency tree, like let's say linear layout instead another linear layout, it wasn't really performing really good. So that's why actually we needed other ways to do it. Like it's just a note, so you don't need to know the backstory, of course, but it will make more sense to you right now. So instead of using this XML file, we will use this binding in order to have the views that are going to be useful for us. So other thing is we will need to define this binding because it's a late init property, as you can see. Activity main binding inflate, we are saying, and we are saying layout inflator. This layout inflator was the traditional file for reading these these XML files. So right now we have this XML file moved into this binding class, which is automatically opening the XML file, as you can see. And we have everything, all the views inside this class defined. So right now, we don't need this set content view. By the way, I didn't talk about set content view, but this is setting all the views that are defined in the XML file to the main activity, so that it will have the layout as here, as you can see. But since we already have the binding, we don't need this anymore. So I'm just deleting this. and instead adding binding root. So we didn't do anything. Basically, we only changed the binding here. But if you want to use the text view again to, let's say, set the text or anything like that, from now on, let's actually do it from this method. So I'm calling this change text method whenever I will call, and I'm saying binding. And as you can see, our text view is already there. So text view, set text, and let's say change text one. Okay. So if I will run this project, it will just set the text to set this text to the first text view that we defined here. Actually, that's it. Of course, we need to play with these layouts and things more, but let's make this your homework, for example, if you want to play, because it's pretty easy actually to understand. One of the things in this layout file is that you have this code and split view, as we already discussed previously. So here you can actually even see a rendered version, zoom in to these things, and you can see, okay. We can go and press here Android. After writing Android, let's say, you can see the options that you can select. You can give some margins, you can give paddings, you can actually set them differently, or you can also actually add different views. It doesn't need to be a text view, obviously. So how to do that? Like we already know those things. So for example, we can set a button here and stuff, and there are a lot of options. But from this design view, you can actually even see what you can use, basically. We didn't talk about design view before because we want you to actually write the XML files, which we are actually always using that. But for example, this is an easy way of doing this, at least to see your options. So you can just drag and drop a button to your layout file. And as you can see, there's a button here. You can add an image view, but on the bottom, you can add a, let's say, select the image for that. And if you will go back to your code view, that you can see that it is already created. So we have a button here, for example, with a name called button. And if you will go back to our code, to our main activity, you can directly use this button. So what you can do with a button, for example, again, you can just set a text or set on click listener. And with click listener, you can also set an action to this button, for example, I don't know, like writing another text and stuff, which we will actually talk about this later. I mean, we don't even need to have a lesson for this. This is the main thing about classes. We will use these views that we created in our activities. But if you have any questions, since it's about the end, let me get your questions first. And I'm strongly encouraging you to play with this designer, move the code here. As you can see, there are other types of texts, views, containers, layouts, widgets. I mean, it's endless. In the right-hand side, you can see the properties of these views, which will make you understand how this is getting filled. If you want to play with the code, you can just always start typing, and the Android Studio fill in with you, for you the things that you can use always. So that's it for this lesson. If you have any questions, just shoot it. Do you have any kind of feedback, questions? If there's anything that you didn't understand about, it could be binding, it could be why we are using the binding, or what if we will leave everything the same way? I mean, or the Gradle file, as I told you before.
Is binding a class or is it, what is it?
Well, I to be honest, I don't know the internals super good, but binding is the actually a way to bind your XML file that where layouts are defined into the code as objects.
Okay. But you have to import it as well first, right?
Yeah, I mean, for now, if you want to just go on, you could always use the find view by ID that I showed you before, like. This one is also provides you the text view, the views that you want to do. The reason we want to use the binding is because it is you don't need to check if these views are null or whatever, if they are there. It's easily accessible from everywhere from your method, so you don't need to have a lot of boilerplate codes everywhere defining and trying to reach the views. You have the binding, and from binding you can just reach to your views only with their respective names as you already defined here with the ID part. So I guess this is a better way.
There's also one more reason for that. It's from the memory point of view. In the past, most of the Android apps had this tiny, small challenge that it was super easy to leak out the memory because your activity simply was holding the reference to this XML layout.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this new binding is really beautiful way how to reduce this possibility really heavily.
How to save resources, right? Because you don't need to. Okay.
Yeah, actually this find view by ID, but as I already told you, is actually just read this XML file and trying to find these views sequentially. Like, think about like you could have defined your view here, which the button, for example. In order to find the button, it is looking for all the views, for example. So it is not a really good way of finding views. Like, it's not very efficient. So this is the binding is some kind of, let's say, map, so that you can just directly reach out to your views directly from the binding itself.
Okay.
And yeah, as I said, I strongly encourage you to play with these views. Just set them text, or I mean, I don't know, set them text colors. You can set listeners, click listeners, or I don't know, you can set paddings. You can change their location and the layout through code, for example. It's a very broad subject. We will get into that later more. So thank you for joining.
Thank you.
See you in the next class. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.